'cause I see the born of no return. Sister, hey now, can't you see we're rushing for the end? I see the point of no return. Now see the point of no return. It's just here.
Well, good evening, everybody. It's Monday, January 20th, 2014. You're listening to Wide Awake News on the Rense Radio Network. My name is Gary Hendershot, and for the next hour or so, I will be barking at the moon. Now, I assume all you folks out there in Never Never Land, wherever you might be, particularly those of you in the upper Midwest of the nation and over on the in the Northeast, I assume you're getting ready to batten down the hatches because that polar vortex, or whatever they decide to call it this week, is apparently sliding back in our direction. And yeah, you know, there's going to be some more really, really cold weather for large portions of the United States. Looks like the jet stream has slid a little bit further south than it normally does. Here in my area, around the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, I'm just a little bit south of Washington, D.C., the pundits are saying outlying areas might get as much as 8 inches of snowfall. We're a little closer to all the hot air being generated off of Washington, D.C., so we get our own, city thermal environment, and we probably won't get hit quite that badly. We're probably going to get somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 or 5 inches. Wife went out, tried to make an emergency run this afternoon to lay in some supplies. We did some major shopping over the weekend, but there were a few things, a few emergency items like that all-important cat food, to keep the cat happy. She trundled over to Trader Joe's to try and get some of that there gourmet cat food that our cat likes, and man, the shelves were bare from what I understand. So apparently the word's out. Everybody's hunkered down, getting ready, and I guess I'm going to be punished by my cat for not having her favorite gourmet cat food. We're probably going to have to play, hide the poop with the cat next couple days. We'll just have to see how that goes. But, yeah, brace yourselves. It's coming. If you're in the affected areas, you know the drill. You've been there before. It's called winter. The 20th of January was set aside some time ago as Martin Luther King Day. So today we are celebrating the life and the message of Martin Luther King Jr. For you youngsters out there who don't remember, there was a time in the United States where when you went into the Tasty Freeze, you had the water fountain that said white, and you had the water fountain that said colored. And of course, that was quite puzzling to youngsters. They'd immediately run up to the colored water fountain and turn the knob, expecting to see rainbow-colored water coming out of that thing. Can you imagine their disappointment when it was just water? And, of course, they'd run over to the white water fountain and turned the knob, expecting to see white water. Strangely enough, all that came out of the faucet was water. Well, sensible people understood that such things really didn't have any place in what was supposedly a free nation. And Martin Luther King became a focal point of bringing that message to a wider audience. Without a doubt, the man was extremely well spoken. As an orator, there are very few who could possibly compare. His message was clear, clean, concise, and made sense to too many people. Now, the way our government responded to his message, in hindsight, might not have been such a great idea. Because back in the days when there was the white water fountain and the black water fountain at the Tasty Freeze, there were vibrant, strong black communities within the United States. There were strong, vibrant black businesses in the United States. And black people, though, yes, they lived in an era of apartheid within the United States, had strong families who lived in strong neighborhoods and had strong business communities that were growing and thriving. In our quest to put aside what at the time was referred to as segregation, we brought about programs, many of which seemed to destroy black neighborhoods, shut down black businesses, and without a doubt had a negative impact on strong black families. So in hindsight, we have to look at the message that Martin Luther King Jr. put on the table. The message was that people should be judged by the quality of their character and not the color of their skin. And as we look at so many of the various programs put in place to try to force a change in people's hearts, wonder whether what we've done was really beneficial for those who we intended to lift up. I don't know the answer to these questions. I look back at the historical facts, and I kind of lived through the tail end of segregation, saw little bits and pieces of it as a child, marched in the civil rights marches. I mean, the message was pretty clear to me, made a lot of sense. But I wonder if Martin Luther King Jr. were alive today and saw the results of what so many thought were the appropriate remedial actions, would he not be out on the street protesting what is in place now as having been counterproductive to his intent? Something to think about on Martin Luther King Day. Now, many people would make this man into something he never really wanted to be. At the time, there was an NSA program called Minaret. Yet another NSA acronym. You know, they try to hide everything under various acronyms. In a secret operation codenamed Minaret, the National Security Agency monitored communications of leading Americans, including King, who criticized the U.S. war in Vietnam. So basically, if you were anti-war, you came up on the radar of the NSA. A review by NSA of the NSA's Minaret program concluded that Minaret was disreputable, if not outright illegal. Problem is, no one at the NSA was ever fired. No one at the NSA ever went to jail. They got a tongue lashing from some, congressional committee and then went about their business and continued doing exactly what they were doing at that time, as we have found recently. Now, J. Edgar Hoover, back in the day, who was the head poobah of the FBI, the guy that no president could possibly get rid of. I mean, that guy spent more years as director of the FBI than many would like to admit. For years, Hoover had been suspicious about potential influence of communists. See, back in those days, you had to check under your bed every night to see if there was a communist hiding under there, because communism was the boogeyman of the day. With the fall of the Soviet Union, we had to find a new boogeyman. So we noticed, a bunch of brown people over there sitting on a lot of oil that we wouldn't mind having. Let's find us a brown boogeyman this time. And now you got to check under your bed every night for Osama bin Laden. But back in the day, the boogeyman was communism. And all you had to do to ruin somebody's reputation was concoct some evidence to show that they were a communist. Kind of like today, where all you got to do to really ruin somebody's credibility and reputation is somehow associate them with terrorism. The more things change, the more things stay the same. Now, King was also accused of womanizing. He was accused of being an adulterer. And there may indeed be some truth. When we put our heroes so high up on a pedestal that we forget that they were human beings, that they had human weaknesses and occasionally made a mistake, we leave ourselves open to undue disappointment. And Martin Luther King was no different. He apparently had a interest in the ladies. Of course, nowadays, with what we've got running the country, we almost wish they'd be looking at women, because some of what these guys seem interested in nowadays is outright scary. All things considered, I mean, people who have power, and Martin Luther King, of course, was a power broker in his day, are generally exposed to, shall we say, offers that might be hard to resist. We've seen this in so many of our leaders. I mean, JFK was reputed to have, a tryst from time to time, and Lord only knows Bill Clinton had nothing to do with that woman, Lewinsky. Depends on what your definition of if is, right? Should we judge Martin Luther King harshly because he had a couple of human failings? I don't think so. Consider the man's message. Consider how remedial action was taken. Consider whether you think the dream that Martin Luther King put forward in the 60s is really being realized with programs we have in place today. And as with all things, make up your own damn mind. The NSA has been sticking their nose in people's business as long as there's been an NSA. I mean, bottom line is those who are in power will always use that power to ensure that they remain in power. And when you've got this big national security apparatus at your beck and call, totally at your disposal, there is a tendency to make use of that national security monster to ensure that the status quo is maintained. Back in the 60s, if you wanted to go blow up a bunch of yellow people over in Vietnam, and you had people here in the United States who objected, well, you had to consider that, they were, that it was in the national interest to either shut those SOBs up or otherwise make them sound like tinfoil hat kooks, okay? And when you got people in the United States barking at the moon about how, the national security state is treading on individual liberties, it's going to be a fact of life that they're going to use this apparatus to make anybody who disagrees with the way they're doing things look like a tinfoil hat wearing kook. And, I had a tinfoil hat all prepped up here I was going to put on right about now, and doggone it, I lost my prop. But yeah, you got to stop and think about it. The more things change, the more they stay the same. There's a lot of people out there who honestly believe that all these revelations that have come out of this Snowden guy, and oh my goodness, like this is all brand new. Like this is the first time this has ever happened. Come on, wake up and smell the coffee. The more things change, the more they stay the same. And I guarantee you what they're going to do is they're going to let all this nonsense with the NSA and this stuff with Benghazi and the fact that the IRS is being used to mess with political opposition. This has all been done before, and it'll all be done again. There is nothing new under the sun, okay? It's all been done before, and it'll all be done again. They're going to let it play out, keep their mouths shut, keep their nose to the grindstone, try to ignore it, call anybody who's talking about it a tinfoil hat-wearing kook, because you know what? You've got an attention span of a gnat, and you will forget. Something new will come up, some big star on TV will get caught in an extramarital affair, or there'll be some, other thing to distract you, and you will totally forget the fact that the NSA doesn't care about the Fourth Amendment. Okay? They don't care. Politicians regularly use the IRS, the tax system, to punish people in dissent, people they don't like for whatever reason, people who contribute to the other guy, people who talk about things that they don't want to be talked about. Bottom line is, your government plays dirty. They always have, and they always will. If you're okay with that, why are you watching me? How come you're not watching Dancing with the Stars on TV, like most of the people out there? Think about that one and make up your own damn mind. I think I got about 30 seconds here before I'm going to hear the bumper music leading out into a commercial. When we get back, I've got a few more stories. I got an interesting little ditty on Fukushima. We're going to talk a little bit about net neutrality. Do you know what net neutrality is? What the heck does it mean to you? And other interesting little ditties in the news. I don't think I've got time to get into this Fukushima news before the there's a fella out on the West Coast who's been taking videos and Geiger counter readings on a favorite surfer's beach out on the West Coast, and some of his videos on YouTube have become like absolutely viral. And I do have a clip of one of those I'm going to play for you when we get back. The interesting thing is it takes civilians with equipment they purchased themselves, walking the beaches, taking the readings to get the information that the government won't give you. We're going to have to take a little break here for some commercial advertising, and we'll be back right after these messages. Please do stand by. And we're back from our first break of the evening. I understand we're going to have one more of those tonight, and got to try to time this correctly so we fit it all in properly. Want to get on this story about Fukushima. Now, you know, we all know the basic situation. You know, there was an earthquake, a tsunami, a nuclear plant off the coast of Japan, which apparently was, you know, only a matter of a few yards above sea level, was pretty much totally destroyed. And now it appears that at least 3 of the reactors at that plant were, I'm not sure, I think total of 6 were housed. 3 of these reactors have melted through to the point where the nuclear fuel rods have actually melted into a molten mass, which people refer to as corium. Initially, the stuff is running at about 9,000 degrees. You know, I mean, this stuff is hot. It will pretty much burn through anything. I think even titanium. I think titanium has a melt-through point of, you know, somewhere around, you know, 6,000-7,000 degrees. So, you know, this stuff is hot enough that there's not much that could keep it in check. The only way they keep it in check within the reactor vessel itself is with control rods that control the exchange of neutrons between the various components, and cooling water that's maintained at pressure. That's the only way they can keep this thing under control. So basically, you got a nuclear reactor that is just hell bent on going into a molten mass. And the reason the reason nuclear scientists are held in such esteem is, you know, they know the secrets of keeping that stuff from totally, you know, melting into a mess. Well, worst case scenario happened in Fukushima, and at least 3 of the reactor cores apparently have melted right through the containment vessel, right through the concrete floor, down into the ground. Some say this stuff might be a couple of 100 feet down. Others are saying it might already be a couple of 1,000 feet down. Nobody really knows for sure. One thing we do know for sure is that the area that this Fukushima plant was built is very well drained. Yeah, groundwater passes right under where the plant resides and flows directly into the Pacific Ocean. Ocean currents being what they are, radioactive isotopes from Fukushima are transported by these currents across the ocean. They wind up, a lot of them in Alaska and down the west coast of the United States. Now, if that wasn't bad enough, there have also been discharges that were airborne that have certainly been picked up by the by air currents. And at this point, radiation from Fukushima has been measured in Central Europe. Okay? Now, I don't want to get into a fear porn session about Fukushima. The realities of Fukushima are certainly bad enough. A lot of people are saying, oh, this is going to be, a cataclysmic end of life on planet Earth. It's worse than if an asteroid had hit. Come on. Okay, this is bad. This is very, very bad. There are certainly people in Japan who have died as a result of Fukushima. I'm sure many more people in Japan are going to die prematurely because of their exposure to the remnants of Fukushima. Here in the United States, I'm convinced by the evidence that there have probably been neonatal deaths that were potentially related to Fukushima. Many who live on the west coast of the United States will probably have their life expectancy reduced by a year, 2 years, 5 years, who knows, depending on how many hot particles they happen to acquire. Everybody assumes that, the damage from Fukushima is, oh, you're going to die of radiation sickness. No. Chances are what'll get you is heart, lung problems. Those are the most common. People will die of heart attacks. They'll die of issues related to the pulmonary system, the exchange of oxygen with the blood. And it'll seem like, well, heart attack got him, no big deal. Nobody's going to go looking for Fukushima particles, just assume, looks like a heart attack. So, a lot of the kinds of death that we can expect to see from exposure to something like Fukushima, it won't be that, one day you're fine and the next day you're glowing in the dark. No. 10 years, 15 years after your exposure, you might keel over dead from a heart attack that you weren't due to have for about another 5-6 years. You might have had a flawed heart to begin with, but you might have been entitled, your clock's good up until, 75, 80 years old, but you're going to die at 70, 75 because those hot particles you acquired pushed you over the edge a little sooner than you might have gone otherwise. So yes, this disaster that comes to us courtesy of General Electric and TEPCO is costly. Many, many people are going to pay the price for their stupidity and their greed. Now, for those who think this is just all hooey, I want you to pay attention to this this YouTube video I'm going to play out. It's it goes pretty quick. It's only about a minute. I think I've got about a minute and a half, 2 minutes before my next commercial break. So I want you to pay attention to this video. This was shot by a fella, just average Joe, just like you, who made the investment in a Geiger counter, took it down to the beach where he lives, where he normally surfs, and took this video. I got to do this tricky so that they get it on Rense. Here we go. Okay, click this.
I'm doing a sand sample. See, I got my detector in the case, up off the sand. Let me flip it over to, this is going to be milligrams per hour.
Okay, now the production values weren't fantastic, but what you just saw there was you saw radiation in beach sand in California registering 10, 15 times what would be considered normal background radiation. You expect to go to the beach, you expect there to be a little bit of background radiation in beach sand. You expect to see, 25, 30, maybe even 40 counts per minute, something decaying in the sand, some radioactive isotope decaying in the sand. When you start seeing, 300, 350, 400 counts per minute, something's going on. We'll be back right after these commercial messages. All right, we are back from our last break for the evening. Now, I don't want to run around sounding like Chicken Little. The sky is falling, the sky is falling. But, there are lessons to be learned about this Fukushima thing. Okay? Now, here's one I would like every one of you to think seriously about and make up your own damn mind. Okay, the United States has over 100 nuclear reactors. Many of them are aging reactors of the same design and vintage as the one that went up in Fukushima. And depending on whose numbers you believe, somewhere between 14 and 27, you hear so many different numbers. Anywhere between 14 and 27 of the nuclear reactors here in the United States that are of the same design and are of the same vintage as what went up in Fukushima, somewhere between 14 and 27 of these things sit on known fault lines, coastal areas that might indeed be impacted by tsunamis, or historical floodplains. Maybe they sit on a river that periodically breaches its banks and could come right up to the door of the nuclear plant. So, depending on whose numbers you want to accept as being the truth, somewhere between 14 and 27 accidents just waiting to happen exist right here in the United States. And unfortunately for my listeners in Europe, I only know the statistics for here in the United States, and the statistics for here in the United States are confusing and obtuse enough. I don't know what your exposure might be. If you live in Germany, or you live in France, or you live in England, I just don't know. I do know that here in the United States, we should be learning a real serious lesson from what happened in Fukushima. Because as bad as Fukushima is, for the most part, it is a Japanese problem. Yes, there are global implications. The Pacific Ocean has been severely impacted. Don't know how long it might take to recover. I doubt very seriously if I'll be able to enjoy Alaskan king crab or Pacific salmon again in my lifetime. And I suspect I will warn my children to stay away from them. And I hope that my children suggest to their children that they stay away from those delicacies. Because as tasty as they might be, I don't know when my clock is supposed to run out. I don't know if I was entitled to 70 years or 75 years or 80 years. I don't know exactly when Gary Hendershot's clock is supposed to run out, but I sure as hell don't want to trade 2, 3, 4, 5 years of what I was entitled to just to enjoy some of that fine Alaskan king crab or Pacific salmon. They're tasty delicacies that are off my menu for the time being. You consider? Make up your own damn mind. I'm going to read a little bit to you from an article back in November of 2012. So this is for historical reference. Historical reference. Back in July, and they're talking about July of 2012, we covered Verizon's argument that network neutrality regulations violated the firm's First Amendment rights. See, this all goes back. You remember some time back where they decided that corporations was people too? You remember that? Well, this is one of the unintended consequences. All of a sudden, corporations are entitled to freedom of speech. Or that's the argument Verizon used. They put it on the table. Let me read that again. Back in July, we covered Verizon's argument that network neutrality regulations violated the firm's First Amendment rights. In Verizon's view, slowing or blocking packets of data on a broadband network is little different from a newspaper editor choosing which articles to publish and should enjoy the same constitutional protection. Okay, so here's the argument. You got a newspaper, and the editor is going to look at this article that the reporter is submitting and say, come on, people are just not interested in this. This is not hard-hitting, or take this back and rewrite it. Give it a little bit of pizzazz, do something to it. But, people are not going to buy papers to read this article, okay? Verizon says that their decision to block you from Netflix so that you are forced to watch their television presentations is the same. Yeah. So, when you got somebody like the Federal Communications Commission telling, Verizon or Cox Cable or whoever else you might be getting your internet from, when the Federal Communications Commission says no, you have to treat all websites the same. You have to allow equal access because, that consumer out there, they are paying you for internet access. You are to provide them internet access that they paid for. Let them go where they want to go. Now, Verizon says, no. We want to make, we want to throttle back packets going to YouTube and Netflix and Hulu. We want to make those sites run really, really slow on our internet connection so that, we can sell these folks our cable TV offering. That was their argument. And yeah, a judge agreed with them. They won their case. Now, right now, as things sit, the people who, monitor such things have not been able to monitor Verizon playing fast and loose with their internet connection. They have not been able to point to a factual data set that says, yes, on this day, Verizon throttled back this internet connection that was trying to reach Hulu or was trying to reach Netflix or was trying to reach YouTube. They have not been able to prove that it has been implemented. But at this point, the Federal Communication Commission rules of the road for internet service providers have been fixed in favor of business opportunities, because now these new rules are being sold to you to increase business opportunities for people like Verizon and AT&T, big internet service providers, as opposed to providing you, the consumer, with the product that you pay for. Now, I don't know about you, but now my internet service is provided by Verizon. Now, the only way I could get a good deal is I bought a package from them where I get, an analog telephone line, I get some cable TV, and I get my internet as a bundle. I get a 3B package, where I pay a monthly fee. I get a cable TV thing, and I get, an analog phone circuit, and I get my internet. Now, the internet service that I get from Verizon so far has proven to be very effective, very fast. I have no complaints with Verizon so far. Okay? I don't watch television, so in that respect, I guess I'm paying for a service that I don't use. But that's okay. The only way I could get the big discount on the internet service, which I do use heavily, was to buy this package that included TV. So I got a Verizon-provided box sitting around collecting dust that never gets used, because there's nothing on TV I'm really interested in seeing. That's aside the point, okay? The fact is, right now, I'm married to these guys at Verizon, okay? I signed a contract with them. I got to deal with them for the next couple of years. If tomorrow they out of the blue decided, well, this guy Gary Hendershot is watching way too much Netflix, and he's spending way too much time on YouTube, and we're monitoring our cable box here, and it hadn't even been turned on in 6 months. They could just decide to throttle my internet connection back, and based on this ruling, there's not a damn thing I could do about it. So the next time you're wondering if the United States government is by and for the people, or perhaps it's by and for the corporate interests, remember my little story here about net neutrality and the Verizon ruling. The fact of the matter is, up until this ruling, back in 2012, your internet service provider was not allowed to treat any website any differently than any other. They had to be totally neutral in their provision of bandwidth. Now, they can just, for any business need, decide, well, he really doesn't need to see that YouTube stuff. He doesn't really need to see that Netflix movie. And it's a matter of free speech. We're just going to turn the spigot off. Net neutrality in the United States of America. 1984 is just, a little bit slow getting here. I can hear the bumper music running in the background, so I have run out of time. But you bet believe it, I will be back next week, do a little bit more barking at the moon. Y'all have a good evening now. Good night.
Calling out to you. turn, turn, won't you turn around? Oh, the point of no return is just ahead now.